Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible mathematical forces secretly running your life? Like, literally, right now, beneath the surface of your daily routine, there's this silent network of code making profound decisions about your future. You can't see it, you can't argue with it, and it absolutely never pauses. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to expose these hidden systems and look at exactly how they're reshaping our world from the shadows.
For years, we've basically been sold this idea that computers and data are inherently objective, right? Like if we just hand our trickiest decisions over to the algorithms, we'll somehow instantly eliminate human bias and enter this new era of perfect fairness. But are these invisible algorithms actually ruining lives instead? Today, we're diving to the really groundbreaking findings of data scientist Cathy O'Neil, because her research reveals how these opaque algorithms are actually micromanaging our reality. And instead of leveling the playing field, they're often aggressively punishing the most vulnerable people among us.
To understand how we arrived at this point, we really need to look at Cathy O'Neil's own journey. She's a brilliant mathematician who actually left the quiet halls of academia for the wildly lucrative world of Wall Street, working as a quantitative analyst for a hedge fund. Now, at first, she was totally thrilled by the sheer power of the global economy's mathematics. I mean, it was the ultimate numbers game. But then the 2008 financial crash happened, and she experienced this profound disillusionment. She ended up walking away from Wall Street altogether just to investigate how mathematical systems were becoming deeply entangled in our biggest societal problems. And what her research brings us face to face with is a terrifying phenomenon she famously calls weapons of math destruction.
So what exactly is a WMD? Think of it like this massive, swirling, unaccountable black box. A weapon of math destruction is essentially a widely used mathematical model that is totally opaque to the very people it's judging. It's completely unregulated, and most dangerously, it creates this toxic, destructive feedback loop. These models aren't just innocent calculators sitting on a desk somewhere, they're acting like unquestionable authorities. Their inner workings are practically invisible to everyone except the coders who built them, and yet their final verdicts are basically impossible to dispute.
To really grasp the human cost of these hidden systems, we need to look at actual people. O'Neil shares the honestly heartbreaking story of Sarah Wasaki. Sarah was a fifth-grade teacher in Washington, D.C., and by all human accounts, she was absolutely phenomenal at her job. Her performance reviews from her principal, from parents, from the local community, they were all glowing. One reviewer literally called her one of the best teachers I've ever come into contact with. She was in there making a tangible, profound difference in these kids' lives every single day.
And Sarah's story brilliantly highlights the massive conflict at the heart of our modern data economy. On one hand, you have the human reality, right? Outstanding reviews, dedicated service, high praise. On the other hand, you have the algorithm's verdict. The DC school district brought in a new evaluation tool called Impact, which used what they called a value-added model to measure teaching effectiveness strictly based on student test scores. The glaring problem here? The algorithm had zero context. It couldn't see the specific socioeconomic challenges her students were facing at home, and it couldn't account for the statistical noise you get with small classroom sizes. It just blindly crunched the numbers. So despite everything Sarah did perfectly in that classroom, the machine handed her an abysmal score, completely overriding the actual human judgment of her peers.
And the consequences of this purely mathematical verdict were incredibly swift and brutal. Based entirely on that one unquestioned algorithmic score, Sarah Wasaki was unceremoniously fired. And it wasn't just her. 205 teachers across the district were fired right alongside her. Now, from a systems engineering perspective, the district thought they were just optimizing the schools by weeding out bad performers. But in reality, the system was just blindly executing decisions based on deeply flawed data, pushing out incredible educators simply because a line of code told them to. Naturally, Sarah and her colleagues felt this was completely outrageous. I mean, wouldn't you? They demanded to know exactly how these scores were even calculated. How does a genuinely amazing teacher get such a terrible grade? But when they pressed for answers, they hit a total brick wall. It's what we call the black box defense. The district officials and the high-priced consultants who built the tool offered absolutely zero clarity. Their main excuse was basically that the algorithm was simply too complex to explain to a layperson. You were just supposed to trust the math, and that effectively stripped these teachers of any meaningful way to defend themselves or set the record straight.
Okay, so how do we actually spot one of these rogue algorithms out in the wild? O'Neil breaks it down into 3 core pillars that make up the anatomy of a WMD. First off, it's opaque. The rules of the game are completely hidden, and honestly, you often don't even realize you're being scored until it's way too late. Second, it's scalable. We aren't talking about something affecting 1 or 2 people. These models scale to impact massive populations, turning what might be a tiny, localized math error into a sweeping tsunami of damage. And third, it is undeniably destructive.
It relentlessly punishes individuals and derails human lives without offering any transparent path for appeal. So, why do these models fail so spectacularly when we apply them to real people? Well, O'Neill points out a fundamental truth that we often seem to forget. Mathematical models are really just simplified toy versions of reality. They are not absolute, undeniable truth. Think about it. No model can possibly capture the rich nuance of human communication or the infinite, messy complexities of the real world. To even build a model in the first place, its creators have to pick and choose what data to include and what to leave out, which means, inevitably, they drop crucial context. And more often than not, they end up unconsciously encoding their own personal prejudices, blind spots, and assumptions right into the software. To really drive this point home, O'Neill draws a fascinating structural parallel. She points out that individual racism actually functions almost exactly like a sloppy predictive model. It makes total sense when you think about it. A racist model is built on haphazard data gathering, totally spurious correlations, and these vast, sweeping generalizations. It spits out a rigid binary prediction about how an entire group of people is supposedly going to behave, and then it relies heavily on confirmation bias, only looking for evidence that supports its twisted assumptions while completely ignoring literally anything that contradicts it. It's a pretty profound way to look at how toxic assumptions operate, whether they live inside a human brain or inside a computer program.
Which brings us to what is easily the most dangerous feature of a WMD, the poisonous feedback loop. This is where these systems go from just being a bit flawed to being truly catastrophic. Let's walk through it. Step 1. A model predicts that a low-income individual is high risk. Step 2. Because of that automated score, the person is flat out denied a job, a crucial loan, or affordable insurance. Step 3. Being locked out of those exact opportunities directly worsens their financial situation. Step 4. The model looks at their new, worsened poverty and says, aha, I knew it, I was right all along. They are high risk. The algorithm literally manufactures its own reality. It actively punishes people and then uses their resulting struggles to justify its own math.
And the really scary part is, we are now facing a full-blown WMD epidemic. These systems aren't safely locked away on Wall Street trading floors anymore. They are scaling exponentially, leaping from one industry to the next. They've infiltrated HR departments, silently deciding whose resume gets seen and whose gets auto-trashed. They're heavily used in banking, quietly determining creditworthiness in the background. They're embedded in health insurance, and shockingly, they're deeply woven into the justice system, predicting recidivism rates and directly influencing the length of actual prison sentences. The sheer scale of this infiltration is honestly staggering.
As these automated systems spread like wildfire, O'Neill uncovers a stark and deeply troubling divide. What we're essentially looking at is the creation of a two-tiered society. On one side, you have the privileged. If you're wealthy or highly educated, you're still afforded the luxury of human judgment. You get the face-to-face interview, a personal banker, and the benefit of the doubt. But on the flip side, you have the masses. The broader public is increasingly just processed by machines, subjected to these rigid, automated verdicts that strictly deny them opportunities with absolutely zero room for context or empathy. It is, quite simply, the automation of inequality.
Ultimately, the huge takeaway from O'Neill's research is that we desperately need a perspective shift. Mathematical models are brilliant, powerful inventions for sure, but they should be our tools, not our masters. We absolutely have to stop treating algorithms as these infallible neutral forces of nature, like the weather or gravity. They are built by humans, and humans make mistakes. Because of that, we have a fundamental moral responsibility to demand transparency. We need to actively audit these black boxes to make sure they're actually fair, rather than just blindly trusting the math. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to just take a second to think about all the algorithms you interact with every single day. The systems sorting your applications, filtering the news you read, or even evaluating your performance at work. As we navigate a world that is increasingly governed by hidden code, we really need to ask ourselves, are we building a society that optimizes for fairness, or are we just optimizing for raw efficiency? And ultimately, will you let a black box silently decide your future? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the systems around you.